The man on death row had never asked for anything. Not in 10 years. He never complained about the food. Never caused fights. Never begged the guards for extra time. While other prisoners shouted and slammed doors, he sat quietly. He read old books. He wrote in a worn notebook. He kept to himself. The other officers noticed. "That one's different," they would say. "Never any trouble." But Officer Amanda Brooks did not feel sorry for him. To Amanda, a prisoner was a prisoner. The court had spoken. The jury had decided. Her job was to keep order and follow the rules. So when Marcus Lee went 10 years without making a single request, Amanda never thought twice about it. Until the night before his final hearing. That night, as Amanda walked her routine patrol past his cell, Marcus called her name in a voice that was barely above a whisper. He slid a sealed envelope through the bars. "Please deliver this after I'm gone," he said. Amanda stared at the envelope. Helping him would break prison rules. It could cost her everything. But something in Marcus's eyes made her stop. "Officer," he said quietly, "that letter contains the truth about what really happened." Amanda walked away. But his words followed her all the way home. And in that moment, everything she had always believed about justice began to crack. Amanda Brooks had worked at the Texas State Correctional Facility for 9 years. She knew every corridor, every locked door, every sound that moved through the building at night. She knew which pipes groaned in the cold, and which lights flickered before burning out. This place had become as familiar to her as her own home. Her shift started at 6 in the morning and ended at 6 in the evening. She walked her rounds every hour, checked every cell, and filed every report. She never missed a step. The other officers respected Amanda. She was fair but firm. She did not bend rules for anyone. If an inmate pushed too hard, she pushed back harder. Not with anger, but with a quiet authority that made people listen. Her father had been a police officer for 25 years. Law enforcement ran in her blood. She had grown up believing that the justice system was built to protect people, and she was proud to be part of it. She had seen a lot in 9 years. Desperate men. Angry men. Men who cried in the dark when they thought no one could hear. But she had learned one rule above all others. Never get personally involved. Keep your distance. Do your job. Go home. For 9 years, Amanda had never broken it. There were 112 inmates at the facility. Amanda knew all of their faces, habits, and patterns. She knew who would cause trouble on a Monday, and who would stay quiet no matter what happened. Marcus Lee stood out from the very first week he arrived. He was 38 years old. Medium height. Calm eyes. He walked slowly, like a man who had accepted something the rest of the world was still fighting. He never raised his voice. Never complained. When the food was bad, he ate it quietly. Other inmates respected him, though no one could fully explain why. Maybe it was because he never tried to take anything from anyone. He helped younger inmates write letters to their families. He shared his books without being asked. Amanda had watched Marcus for years from a careful distance. She noticed that he never received visitors. Not once in 10 years. No family. No friends. No lawyer. During mail call, his name was never read out loud. He served his time in complete silence. And yet, he did not seem broken. That was the part Amanda could not explain. It was a Tuesday evening in October, 3 weeks before Marcus Lee's scheduled execution date. The air inside the prison had that heavy feeling it always got in autumn, cold from the vents but warm from too many bodies crowded into small spaces. Amanda was doing her final patrol of the evening. Her boots clicked steadily on the concrete floor. Most inmates were already quiet. A few murmured in low voices. She was almost past Marcus's cell when he spoke. "Officer Brooks." His voice was barely above a whisper. She stopped. Marcus was standing close to the bars. In his right hand, he held a sealed white envelope. It looked clean and carefully kept. "I need to ask you something," he said. Amanda crossed her arms. "What is it, Lee?" He held the envelope out through the bars. "Please deliver this after I'm gone. There is someone outside who needs to receive it." Amanda looked at the envelope but did not touch it. Passing materials outside the prison on behalf of an inmate was a serious violation. It could cost her her job. Maybe more. "That's not something I can do," she said flatly. Marcus nodded slowly, like he had expected that answer. "Officer," he said quietly, "that letter contains the truth about what really happened." Amanda walked away. But his words stayed with her all the way home. That night, Amanda sat at her kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee in front of her. She had not taken a single sip. She was staring at the wall. She had heard many things from inmates over the years. Excuses? Lies. Stories designed to pull at her heart. She had learned to recognize them and let them pass. But Marcus had not begged. He had not cried. He had not tried to manipulate her. He had simply stated a fact and let it sit. Amanda pushed her chair back and went to her bookshelf. She kept old case files there out of habit. She flipped through them until she found a thin folder she had nearly forgotten about. Marcus Lee. Convicted 10 years ago of first-degree murder. The victim was Daniel Reeves, a local businessman found dead in his office. Marcus had worked for Reeves as a warehouse manager. The trial had lasted only 4 days. 4 days. Amanda frowned. That seemed short for a murder case. The key witness had been a man named Gary Hollis, a coworker who said he saw Marcus leave the building just before the death was reported. Marcus had maintained his innocence from the very first day. Amanda closed the folder. She told herself it did not matter. But she did not sleep that night. Over the next 3 days, Amanda did something she had never done in 9 years of working at the facility. She started researching a case on her own time. She told herself it was just curiosity. Anyone could read old court records. She started with newspaper archives from 10 years ago. 2 local papers had covered the case. The articles were short. Warehouse manager convicted in boss's murder. Marcus had been found guilty on the testimony of a single eyewitness and on evidence found at the crime scene. Amanda printed the articles and laid them on her kitchen table. Then she found a summarized court transcript through a public legal database and read it slowly with a pencil in hand. Something about the timeline bothered her immediately. Gary Hollis said he saw Marcus leaving the building at 8:45 in the evening. But the coroner's report placed the time of death between 9 and 10 at night. That was a gap of at least 15 minutes. If Marcus had already left before the death occurred, Hollis's testimony proved almost nothing. Amanda set her pencil down. She stared at the page. She told herself there was probably an explanation. But she kept reading anyway. By the end of the first week, Amanda had filled 2 notebooks with observations and printed 14 documents. Her evenings, once quiet and peaceful, were now spent bent over papers under a single lamp. The more she read, the more uncomfortable she felt. The key evidence at trial had been fingerprints found on a letter opener near Daniel Reeves's body. The prints matched Marcus. But Amanda dug deeper and found something the newspaper articles had not mentioned. Marcus had used that letter opener regularly as part of his normal job. His fingerprints being on it proved nothing unusual at all. She also found a court motion filed by Marcus's public defender requesting the security camera footage from the building's back entrance. The motion had been denied. The reason listed was not relevant to the case. But if the footage existed, it could have shown exactly when Marcus left the building. Amanda sat back and rubbed her eyes. A public defender with too many cases. A witness with questionable timing. Evidence that had not been properly tested. A footage request denied without proper explanation. None of this proved Marcus was innocent. But none of it clearly proved he was guilty either. She looked at her father's photo on the wall. He used to say, "The truth does not always shout. Sometimes it just waits until someone decides to listen." Amanda was starting to listen. On the 9th day of her research, Amanda found something she had not expected. While searching through an online archive of old local news, she found a short article published 3 years after Marcus's conviction. The headline read, "Key witness in Lee case recants statement." Her hands went still on the keyboard. Gary Hollis had given a new interview to a small community newspaper. In it, he said he had not been completely sure about the time. The pressure of the trial had made him more confident than he actually was. He had been nervous and wanted to help the police. In doing so, he may have given a time that was not accurate. The article was only 4 paragraphs long. It had never been picked up by a larger paper. No lawyer had filed anything on Marcus's behalf. The correction had simply appeared and then disappeared, like a stone dropped into a river with no one watching. Amanda printed the article and placed it at the top of her stack. She sat very still for a long time. She thought about Marcus in that cell for 10 years. Quiet. Never causing trouble. Writing in his notebook. Helping other inmates with their letters. And she thought about the sealed envelope he had held out to her through the bars. Maybe it did contain the truth. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus handed Amanda the envelope. She had not accepted it. But she had not stopped thinking about it either. Now execution day was only 5 days away. At work, Amanda went through her routines carefully. She filed her reports on time. She walked her rounds without missing a step. She spoke to the other officers the same way she always had. But inside, everything felt different. On Thursday morning, she requested a routine cell inspection for Marcus's block. As she reached his cell, she slowed her pace. Marcus was sitting on the edge of his cot, reading. He looked up when she stopped. "How are you holding up?" The words came out before she had fully decided to say them. Marcus closed his book. "I've made my peace with most things. There is only one I cannot settle." "The letter," Amanda said quietly. He nodded. "It is addressed to my daughter. She was 5 years old when I was taken away. She is 15 now. She does not know the full truth. She deserves to know it before she grows up believing her father was a killer." Amanda finished the inspection and moved on. But that evening she sat in her car outside her apartment for 20 minutes without starting the engine. She had a decision to make. On the 4th morning before the execution, Amanda made a phone call she had been putting off for days. The number belonged to Claire Nguyen, a former public defender who now ran a small nonprofit legal advocacy group. Amanda had met her once at a community event. She had kept the number without really knowing why. The call was short. Amanda described a case in general terms without giving her name. A death row conviction built on a single eyewitness. A retraction that had never been used in court. A security footage request denied at trial. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you talking about the Marcus Lee case?" Amanda's breath caught. "You know it?" "I looked at it briefly 2 years ago," Claire said. "I never had enough time or resources to pursue it. But something always bothered me about it. Do you have documents?" "Yes," Amanda said. "A lot of them." "Then bring them to me today. And if that man has anything written down himself, anything at all, that matters too." Amanda hung up. She sat at her desk for a moment, staring straight ahead. Then she stood up, picked up her keys, and made one final decision. It was time to accept the envelope. That afternoon, Amanda arranged a supervised welfare check visit with Marcus. The small meeting room was quiet. A guard stood outside the locked door. Marcus looked at her with steady eyes. She slid a small piece of paper across the table. It said simply, "I am ready." Marcus exhaled slowly. It was the only time Amanda had seen emotion move across his face. Not tears, not relief. Something quieter, like a man who had been holding his breath for 10 years and was finally letting a little air go. He spoke in a low voice. He told her what was in the letter. He told her about his daughter, Jade, who had been 5 when he was arrested and was now 15, living in Austin with a foster family. The letter contained 3 things: his account of what truly happened the night Daniel Reeves died, the name of a man he believed had far more reason to harm Reeves, and a message to Jade telling her who her father really was. Amanda just listened. When he was done, she looked at him carefully. "I'm going to need the envelope," she said. Marcus reached into the pocket of his uniform. He had been carrying it every day. He placed it on the table. Amanda picked it up and placed it inside her folder without looking away from his face. That evening, Amanda drove to Claire Nguyen's office above a printing shop on the edge of downtown. The walls were covered in case papers. 2 volunteers sat at cluttered desks. It looked nothing like an official law office, but the work felt more urgent than anything Amanda had seen in a government building. She laid everything on the table. Her 14 printed documents. Her 2 notebooks. The article about Gary Hollis's retraction. The court motion about the security footage. And Marcus's sealed envelope. Claire put on reading glasses and worked through everything in silence. One volunteer took notes. The other searched databases on a laptop. 2 hours passed. At 10 o'clock, Claire set the last paper down. The retraction alone is significant. It was never submitted to the court. It's the kind of new evidence that can support a motion for a stay of execution. We only have 4 days, Amanda said. I know, Claire replied. I'm going to contact the state appeals court tonight. And we'll need to reach Jade Lee's guardian. Amanda looked at the envelope. What about the letter? That goes to Jade, Claire said simply. It belongs to a daughter, not a courtroom. Amanda nodded. For the first time in 2 weeks, something loosened in her chest. The next 48 hours moved faster than anything Amanda had experienced in her career. Claire filed an emergency motion with the Texas State Appeals Court on Thursday morning. She cited the witness retraction, the denied footage request, and the timeline inconsistencies. She attached copies of Amanda's research. Amanda went to work both days as normal. She filed her reports. She walked her rounds. She answered questions from supervisors without missing a beat. On the inside, she felt like she was standing on a narrow bridge over fast-moving water. On Thursday afternoon, the warden called her in. Warden Harris was a tall man with a gray mustache and a steady gaze. He had run the facility for 11 years. He set down a paper and looked at her directly. I understand an appeal has been filed in the Lee case. The appeals court contacted us this morning. Amanda said nothing. Harris studied her for a long moment. If you have done something that crosses the line, I need to know about it now. I shared research with a legal advocacy group, Amanda said. All the documents I used were public records. Harris was quiet for a long time. Then he said simply, I see. He did not say anything more that day. Amanda left his office not knowing what was coming next. But she had told him the truth. That, at least, felt solid. On Friday morning, the Texas State Appeals Court issued a temporary stay of execution in the case of Marcus Lee. The announcement came through official channels at 7:42 in the morning. Amanda was already at the facility. Word spread quickly through the building. Officers murmured. The warden's office made 2 calls within minutes. Legal staff moved fast between departments. Amanda heard the news from a fellow officer while refilling her coffee cup. She set the pot down carefully and breathed. She did not smile. She did not say anything. She finished pouring her coffee and went back to her desk. A stay of execution meant Marcus would not die in 4 days. It meant the court had seen enough in the new filings to pause and take a closer look. It did not mean he was free. It did not mean the conviction was overturned. There was still a long road. But he had time. And time, Amanda had learned in the past 2 weeks, was everything when the truth had been sitting unheard for a decade. Later that morning, during her rounds, she passed Marcus's cell. He was sitting on his cot. Same as always. Quiet. Still. But when she passed, he looked up. And for just 1 second, something moved in his eyes that she had never seen before. Hope. The stay gave Claire Nguyen's team 6 weeks to build a formal appeal. Amanda continued going to work every day. The warden had not suspended her or filed any action. She did not know if that was coming. She had accepted that it might. What surprised her was a second conversation with Harris on the Monday after the stay was granted. He called her back into his office and closed the door. "My job is to run this facility according to the rules," he said. "You know that." "Yes, sir." "And what you did sits in a gray area?" "Yes, sir." Harris folded his hands. "The evidence you brought forward was all public record. You did not tamper with anything inside this facility. You did not pass the envelope through official channels." Amanda waited. "I'm going to hold any question of discipline until the appeal proceeds," he said. "What happens after will depend on what the court finds." He stood, which meant the meeting was over. Amanda stood too. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "Just make sure what you found is real." She met his eyes. "I believe it is." Harris gave a single nod. She left his office with her job still intact and something more important, his quiet signal that he had not yet decided she was wrong. During the appeal process, Amanda did something she had been thinking about since Marcus first mentioned his daughter. She contacted Jade Lee's foster family in Austin. Through Claire's legal team, Amanda arranged a short call with Jade's foster mother, Ruth. She just wanted to make sure the family was ready for the letter when the time came. Ruth had a steady voice and careful words. She explained that Jade was a quiet teenager who worked hard in school and never spoke about her father. Not from anger. From a deep and practiced silence, the kind that forms in a child who has learned not to hope for something. Ruth told Amanda that Jade had stopped asking questions about Marcus around the age of 9. She had simply filed the fact of him away inside herself and closed the door. Amanda listened without speaking. When Ruth finished, Amanda said simply, "There is a letter from him. When the time is right, she should have it." Ruth was quiet. Then, "She is old enough to decide whether she wants to read it. I will make sure she knows it exists." Amanda thanked her and hung up. She sat for a moment, thinking about a 15-year-old girl with a closed door inside her. And she hoped, with everything she had, that it was about to open. 3 weeks into the appeal, Claire's team made a breakthrough Amanda had not expected. A volunteer had spent days tracing the security footage from Daniel Reeves's building on the night of the murder. The footage had been requested at trial and denied without proper legal basis. The volunteer found a record that the footage had been preserved on a hard drive logged into police evidence storage. For months after the trial, it was marked for disposal. But it had never actually been disposed of. The drive was sitting in a police evidence warehouse, misfiled under an incorrect case number. Claire filed a formal evidence request with the court immediately. 5 days later, the court ordered the drive retrieved and examined. The footage was intact. The timestamp showed Marcus leaving the building at 8:42 in the evening, walking out the front entrance, and going directly to his car. The coroner had placed the time of death at 9:15 at the earliest. Marcus Lee could not have been inside the building when Daniel Reeves was killed. Amanda read Claire's message twice. She set her phone down on the kitchen table and pressed both palms flat against the surface. They had found it. The truth had been sitting in a warehouse for 10 years, misfiled and forgotten. And now it was in the light. Within 2 days of the footage's discovery, Claire submitted it to the court along with a formal request for a full review of Marcus's conviction. She also added the Gary Hollis retraction, the timeline inconsistencies, and a new statement from a forensics expert who had reviewed the fingerprint evidence. The expert's conclusion was straightforward. The fingerprints on the letter opener were consistent with regular workplace use and could not be used to place Marcus at the scene during the crime. The media picked up the story on a Wednesday morning. A state newspaper reporter had been quietly following the appeal and published a detailed article the same day the footage was confirmed. The headline read, "New evidence raises serious doubts in 10-year death row case." By evening, 2 more papers had followed. A television news team requested an interview with Claire, which she gave briefly and carefully. She did not name Amanda directly. Amanda watched the broadcast at home that night with the volume low. She thought about the night Marcus slid the envelope through the bars. She thought about how close she had come to walking away. How many times she had told herself it was not her problem. But the truth, once you have seen it, does not let you walk away cleanly. She went to bed that night and slept better than she had in weeks. The formal court hearing took place 5 weeks after the stay of execution was granted. Amanda was not in the courtroom. She was at work. But Claire called her the moment the session ended. The judge had reviewed all submitted evidence, the security footage, the witness retraction, the forensic report, and the original trial records. He found that the original trial had contained significant procedural errors and that the key evidence used to convict Marcus had not been properly challenged. The conviction was vacated. Marcus was not exonerated outright yet. The state had 30 days to decide whether to retry the case. But given what the footage showed and the collapsed state of the original testimony, Claire believed the state would not pursue a retrial. Amanda was in the facility corridor when she got the call. "Thank you," she said to Claire, and hung up. That afternoon during her round, she passed Marcus's cell. He was on his cot reading. But there was something different in the air. Word travels fast inside a prison. He looked up when she stopped. "The court ruled," Amanda said quietly. Marcus nodded. He already knew. "How are you feeling?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "Like I can breathe again." Amanda nodded once and continued her round. 22 days after the conviction was vacated, the state of Texas announced it would not pursue a retrial in the case of Marcus Lee. Marcus walked out of the Texas State Correctional Facility on a Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. The sun was bright and cold. Claire's legal team stood outside. A caseworker from Jade's foster family stood nearby. Amanda was not outside. She was at her post. It was not her moment. It was his. But she watched from the hallway window near the main exit. She saw Marcus step through the outer door. He stopped and looked up at the sky. His eyes were closed. He stood very still, letting the cold air and the light touch his face. Then he opened his eyes and walked toward the small group waiting for him. Amanda turned away from the window and went back to work. That evening, Claire sent her a short message. Jade read the letter. She asked me to thank whoever made sure it reached her. I told her someone who cared about the truth. Amanda read the message 3 times. Then she set her phone down and made a cup of coffee. She did not need to be named. She just needed to know it had reached the right hands. 3 weeks after Marcus's release, Amanda was called into Warden Harris's office for the final time on this matter. She had spent the previous weeks wondering what the outcome would be. She had operated in a gray area. She had gone outside normal channels. Her actions had ultimately undone a decade-old conviction. She sat down across from Harris. He looked the same as always. Hard to read. He placed a single sheet of paper on the desk between them. It was not a disciplinary notice. It was a letter from the warden's office confirming that after a full internal review, Amanda's actions had been assessed as falling outside official protocol but within the bounds of using publicly available information appropriately. No formal disciplinary action would be taken. Amanda looked at the page without speaking. "There are people above me who are not comfortable," Harris said. "The fact that a 10-year conviction was undone with connections to this facility creates discomfort." "I understand," Amanda said. "But the footage existed. The retraction existed. The truth was available." He paused. "You simply decided to look for it." Amanda said nothing. "Back at your post tomorrow morning at 6, Harris said. "Yes, sir." She walked out of his office with her career intact, and something she had not fully expected, the knowledge that doing right sometimes survived the system after all. A month after Marcus's release, Amanda found a handwritten letter in her mailbox. No return address. But she recognized the handwriting immediately. Marcus had written 3 careful pages. He thanked her honestly, not the way people usually thank someone for a favor, but as someone who had lived through something almost impossible, and was trying to put it into words. He wrote about what 10 years inside 4 walls had truly felt like. He wrote about the day he chose to stop being angry, because anger was costing him more than the walls did. He wrote about Jade. They had met twice since his release. The first meeting had been quiet. Two strangers slowly recognizing each other across 10 years of distance. The second had been longer. She asked questions. He answered honestly. He wrote, "She is stronger than I deserve. And she is more forgiving than I had any right to hope for." At the very end, Marcus wrote something Amanda read 3 times. He wrote, "You could have kept walking that night. Most people would have. I chose you because I watched you for 10 years and noticed something. You were the only officer here who looked at the inmates like we were still human. That is rarer than people realize." Amanda folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside her father's photograph. She sat quietly for a long time. In the months that followed, Amanda's story began to spread in ways she had not anticipated. Claire had spoken at a legal conference in Houston, using the case as an example of how ordinary people outside formal legal systems could surface overlooked evidence. She did not use Amanda's name, but word found its way through networks. A journalist tracking wrongful convictions in Texas reached out to Amanda for a comment. She declined. What she had done was not something she wanted turned into a story about herself. But inside the facility, things had shifted. Some officers were uncomfortable. A few made it clear, through small daily signals, that they thought she had crossed a line she should not have crossed. Others were quieter about it. One officer named Dale, who had worked there for 16 years, stopped by her desk one afternoon. "I've been thinking about a case that bothered me," he said. "From about 4 years back. I never did anything about it." Amanda looked up at him. "You don't have to do anything," she said carefully. "But if something doesn't sit right, that feeling usually has a reason." Dale nodded slowly and walked away. Amanda watched him go. She did not know what he would do, but she had learned one thing from the whole experience: questions, once asked, refused to go back to sleep. 6 months after Marcus was released, Claire called with an unexpected update. The name Marcus had included in his letter had been passed to a detective with the state's cold case unit. Marcus had named Victor Cole, a former business partner of Daniel Reeves who had been in a serious financial dispute with him in the months before the murder. At the original investigation, Cole had been interviewed briefly and cleared with almost no documentation. The cold case detective had reopened the file. It was early. Nothing had been confirmed. But the detective had found financial records showing Cole stood to gain significantly from Reeves's death, facts never presented at Marcus's trial. When Claire finished, Amanda said only, "I hope they find what they're looking for." After the call, she sat quietly. She thought about what her father used to say when she was young. He told her that justice was not a single moment. It was a long chain of small decisions made by ordinary people who chose not to look away. She had been one link in that chain. Maybe Dale would become another. Maybe someone she had never met would close the circle. She could live with not knowing the ending, because she already knew the part that mattered most. She had not walked away. On a Sunday afternoon in late spring, Amanda drove to Austin. She had arranged the visit through Claire and Ruth, Jade's foster mother. It was a quiet meeting at a small park near the foster family's home. Amanda had not planned to say much. She just felt she owed it to something to be there. Jade was taller than Amanda had pictured. She had her father's steady eyes and a careful way of carrying herself, like someone who had learned to take up less space than she was entitled to. They sat on a bench near a small fountain. Ruth sat a few yards away, giving them space. Jade spoke first. "Claire told me you were the one who carried his letter." "Yes," Amanda said. "He waited 10 years before asking anyone for help. Why do you think he waited so long?" Amanda thought before answering. "I think he didn't want to put anyone in a difficult position. He was protecting other people, even while he was the one locked up." Jade was quiet. Then, "That sounds like him. From the little I remember." They sat without talking for a while. The spring air was soft and warm. Before Amanda left, Jade looked at her directly. "Thank you? Not for saving him. For believing it was worth looking." Amanda drove home with those words sitting in the center of her chest. They stayed there for a long time. Dear viewers, some choices do not come with clear instructions. They arrive quietly, in a dimly lit corridor, in the form of a sealed envelope pressed through the bars of a cell. Amanda Brooks built her career on the belief that following the rules was the same thing as doing what was right. She was not wrong to believe that. Rules exist for good reasons. Order protects people. But she learned something no rule book had ever taught her. The truth does not always shout. It does not always come with lawyers or the right connections. Sometimes the truth is a quiet man who has watched the world pass by for 10 years without once asking for anything. Who chooses, at the final possible moment, to trust one person. Not because that person is powerful, but because she was the only one who still looked at him like he was human. Marcus Lee is free today. Jade Lee has her father's words. A cold case detective is asking questions that were never asked before. And Amanda Brooks still goes to work every morning at 6. She still walks her rounds. She still files her reports. But she walks those corridors differently now. Because she has learned that justice is not always the result of following orders. Sometimes it is the result of one person choosing not to keep walking. And that single choice can change more lives than they will ever fully know.